Judging by the thousands of comments left on my previous videos about the NHS Data Sharing Programme, which has now been delayed till later this year, there seems to be a reasonable amount of confusion as to how to opt out and what's the difference between a Type 1 opt-out and a national data opt-out. Confusingly enough, they have different names and they have different purposes. So I thought I would do another short video to explain the difference so that you understand what these are. But first of all, if you're new to me, I'm a barrister who helps you understand law, so make sure you hit the subscribe button. It does help my channel grow and it helps you stay in touch with new videos as I release them. And do drop your questions below. They might find their way onto a video on here, or I might answer them on my sister channel, Black Belt Secrets, which I'll link below in the description as well. So first of all, just an overarching comment. This video and the other videos are not designed to encourage you to opt out or indeed to stay in and share your data. They are merely to give you an understanding of what the system is, how it works, so that you have an informed choice as to whether or not you allow your data to be shared and how you can stop that from happening if it's not what you want. So as I said, there are two separate opt-out methods, but they actually do different things. It's not an either or. But first of all, let's explain a little bit about what this data sharing is, why it's happening, and whether or not you might think it's a good thing or a bad thing. So starting at the beginning, everyone that is registered with a GP will obviously provide their GP lots of personal information, not just about yourself and where you live, but about any medical needs that you have, so that the GP can have a record of what your needs are and how best to cater for you. Overall, this builds a database of information of all of the patients registered at that GP in that particular area. In the event that you need specialist care, then the GP will often send away some of your data to a specialist so that the specialist can treat you, who may well be in another hospital in another area. Many of you have asked what NHS Digital is and how and why it is different from your own GP practice. Well, you can think of your GP practice as being a very localized practice that stores information of all of the patients in that area, as I've just outlined. Whereas NHS Digital is a national operation, and I can do no better than to read out what NHS Digital's website About section says about what they do. NHS Digital describes the work that their teams do as designing, developing, operating a national IT and data service that supports clinicians at work, helps patients to get the best care, and use data to improve health and care. In other words, they will collate, analyze, and use various information and data to help support GP practices and other clinical operations around the country. So now we come to this data sharing scheme so that you may better understand what it is and what it's being used for. As I described in my previous video, this is called the General Practice Data for Planning and Research. Again, I'll put a link in the description so you can go and read exactly what this data is collected and used for. So now back to the two types of opt-out. You have your GP practice and you have NHS Digital, which is collecting the data for the purposes that are outlined on that website that is linked. Now, according to the NHS Digital website, the Type 1 opt-out was introduced in 2013. If you registered this opt-out with your GP, then it prevented your GP from sharing this data and information with NHS Digital for the purposes set out on their website. Not only have many of you told me in the comments that you didn't even know that this existed, but this Type 1 opt-out is soon going to go away because it is going to be replaced eventually by this new data sharing scheme. Now that you can think of your information being stored at your GP, a Type 1 opt-out would prevent any of your information being shared outside of your GP, other than for the purposes of your direct care. Now, as I said, this data sharing scheme, which has now been put back till the 1st of September of this year, 2021, the data sharing scheme would take all of the information stored at GPs and store it on a central database with NHS Digital. And again, as I said, there are many purposes for which NHS Digital might need to use that data for research, finding cures to diseases, vaccinations, and so on. But if you don't want your information to be shared with NHS Digital for this purpose, then you need to register a Type 1 opt-out. But the important thing is this: the Type 1 opt-out must be registered with your GP. And as I understand it, at the time of recording, this cannot be done online or with the NHS app. It needs to be done in a paper format with your GP. Many people have told me that they've emailed this form or sent it by the post, or even walked in and handed it over in person. So now that we have the overview of your GP and NHS Digital and the sharing of information between them, whether it's for your direct care or otherwise, The new data sharing scheme is set to share this information, albeit pseudonymized, which is not completely anonymous. There is a small code that allows NHS Digital to still track who is who among the database, but nonetheless allows NHS Digital to share this data with third parties for the reasons set out on their website, which is predominantly for research and healthcare. And this is where the national data opt-out comes in. It's not a type 2 opt-out as you might expect. They have different names because they have a different purpose. They are a completely different type of opt-out. A national data opt-out is telling NHS Digital that you do not consent for your data that is collected by NHS Digital from your GP to share that with any third party. In other words, if you only do a national data opt-out, then NHS Digital will collect that information from your GP. They simply won't be able to share it with any other third party. If you want to prevent NHS Digital from having your data in the first place, then as I said, you need to file this type 1 opt-out with your GP. But as I always do on this channel, I urge you to have a very careful and balanced approach and view to this subject, because the collection and analysis of data and information is obviously critical to fighting new diseases such as the pandemic that we all find ourselves in. And again, as I've said in other videos, I personally think this is a very careful balancing exercise between the rights, choices and freedoms of individuals, particularly when it pertains to critical and personal information, as against the needs to continue medical research, develop new medicines and fight diseases. So as I said, I wanted to do this video just to do an overview of what the difference is between a type 1 opt-out and a national data opt-out, and again reinforce the purposes that they are collecting and sharing this information, but at the same time reminding you of the choices that you have, because I believe that we should all have the relevant knowledge to make an informed choice as to whether or not to allow our data to be shared. And as usual, this video cannot possibly cover every aspect of this issue, but I've linked the relevant resources in the description below so you can go and read those for yourself. And it goes without saying that if you are perfectly happy for your information to be shared with universities and research companies to develop medicines and fight diseases, then you need not do anything and your data will be shared from the deadlines that's set by NHS Digital. On the other hand, if you feel very strongly about this issue and there are people that you care about that you would like to inform, perhaps they haven't had the opportunity to read about this yet, then I would urge you to share this video with them, and hopefully it will give them a balanced overview of what it is, how it works, and if they want to do anything with it, how they do that. So in the meantime, do drop me your questions and comments below. Thank you for watching, and remember, stay humble and subscribe.